As they track down and arrest fugitives.
That camera on my phone.
An arrest like this isn't by chance.
He's one of 5 people now arrested as part of Operation Purple Haze. Thursday, authorities told us about the push to get dangerous gang leaders off the streets. Right now, police are still looking for these 4 men.
When the ATF, U.S. Marshal, and Omaha Police targeted the Trip Set gang with early morning raids last month, besides the 11 arrests, investigators seized 41 firearms. A quarter of them had been stolen, and 2 pounds.
They have not released his name, but say he was arrested alongside a 30-year-old associate, Rene Saul Escobar Ochoa. This video shows their arrest. You can hear an officer yell at occupants in the vehicle to open the door.
Violent gang members are now off Omaha streets. A special task force comes together to catch repeat criminals, but there's still more fugitives on the run.
June 2017. A 7-month investigation into gun and drug trafficking in Omaha and Council Bluffs leads to 22 arrests of gang members with extensive criminal backgrounds. The ATF touts Operation Brass Catcher as a wake-up call to those who choose to bring gun violence into our neighborhoods.
Nebraska is often remembered for its quiet plains, historic farmlands, and cultural icons from Malcolm X, born in Omaha, to Hall of Fame quarterback Gale. The state has long been seen as a symbol of Midwestern pride and resilience. Yet beneath its calm exterior, Nebraska's largest city has quietly battled one of the Midwest's most persistent undercurrents: organized street violence. Omaha, once known primarily for its jazz legacy, stockyards, and community values, has evolved into an unexpected focal point in America's broader fight against gangs, drugs, and illegal weapons. Over the last decade, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, and Omaha Police have launched a string of major operations, each one peeling back another layer of the city's underground networks. From MS-13 fugitives hiding in the suburbs to federal RICO indictments targeting the 40th and 44th Avenue Crips, Omaha's law enforcement agencies have fought to dismantle drug pipelines, expose gun trafficking rings, and stem the cycle of retaliatory violence.
U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says they arrested a high-ranking MS-13 gang member and accused right here in Omaha.
They have not released his name, but say he was arrested alongside a 30-year-old associate, Rene Saul Escobar Ochoa. This video shows their arrest. You can hear an officer yell at occupants in the vehicle to open the door.
Open the door! Open the door! Step out!
A few seconds later, you see a man put both his hands in the air and walk toward officers. ICE says both are in the country illegally, and Escobar Ochoa is also a known MS-13 gang member, wanted in El Salvador, and is also accused of giving orders to other gang members to commit several crimes, including multiple homicides and drug trafficking. Investigators say the two embedded themselves in the Omaha area and, quote, posed a severe threat to the safety of the local community.
Federal law enforcement agents carried out a targeted operation in Omaha, Nebraska, resulting in the arrest of 2 suspected members of the violent MS-13 gang. Authorities described one of the men as a high-ranking figure on El Salvador's top 100 most wanted list, calling him one of the country's most dangerous fugitives. The suspect, whose name has not yet been released, is wanted in El Salvador for multiple crimes, including the aggravated homicide of 5 people, attempted aggravated deletion, deprivation of liberty, and affiliation with a terrorist organization. The second man was identified as Rene Saul Escobar Ochoa, also a confirmed MS-13 gang member. Federal officials said Ochoa played a leadership role in organizing violent and criminal activity for the gang. He is accused of issuing orders to fellow members to carry out multiple deletions, acts of extortion, drug trafficking, and kidnappings. Both men were reportedly living in Omaha without legal documentation and were arrested without incident after federal and local authorities coordinated intelligence gathered by the Nebraska State Patrol's Information Analysis Center.
When the ATF, U.S. Marshal, and Omaha Police targeted the Trip Set gang with early morning raids last month, besides the 11 arrests, investigators seized 41 firearms. A quarter of them had been stolen, and 2 pounds of marijuana. It's a violent gang responsible for 6 felony assaults just last summer, said the U.S. attorney. A confidential informant helped investigators get the guns and those described as dangerous active gang members off the streets. A 6 News investigation has found 3 of the 11 are already out of jail less than 2 weeks after their arrest. In with Reuben Rowe, charged with distribution of marijuana and possessing a gun during a drug deal. The government argued why he needed to be locked up until trial, that he's a flight risk and a danger to the community. Based on what he heard, U.S. Magistrate Judge Michael D. Nelson said he was reasonably assured Rowe would appear in court and released him on the promise he'd stay out of trouble.
Do you want to be released on these conditions?
Yes, Your Honor.
The judge also rejected jail time before trial for Gale, who is facing drug and gun charges. Lowing Yar is accused of distribution in connection with the gang raid from last month. He could also be deported.
In Omaha targeted an 11-member gang that prosecutors called very dangerous individuals. Yet several defendants aren't behind bars. Omaha Police seized 41 firearms, about a quarter reported stolen, and roughly 2 pounds of Mary, and tied the group to 6 felony assaults from last summer. A confidential informant helped investigators get guns off the street and identify active members. Despite the scope of the operation, a local TV review of court records found 3 of the 11 were out of jail less than 2 weeks after their arrests, which frustrated some officers who say too many gun defendants are released before trial in federal cases. Unlike in state court, federal defendants don't post cash to bond out. Judges instead decide if release conditions can reasonably assure public safety and the defendants return to court. In hearings captured on official courtroom audio, prosecutors argued to detain several of the men. For Reuben Rowe, charged with distributing Mary and possessing a gun during a drug deal, the government said he'd funneled 6 firearms, including a stolen one, to convicted felons and other prohibited people, calling him both a community danger and a flight risk. Magistrate Judge Michael Nelson nevertheless released him under conditions, saying he was reasonably assured Rowe would appear and obey the rules. The judge posed the standard question, and Rowe agreed to the terms. Judge Nelson also declined to jail Gale Pretrial on drug and gun charges, and he overruled detention for Lowing Yar, who is accused of meth distribution and faces possible deportation, even after prosecutors cited his history of failing to appear. Explaining his approach in open court, the judge pointed to Congress's mandate. If specific conditions can reasonably assure public safety and future appearances, release is required. Pulled out details for your case file. The operation netted 41 guns with stolen weapons in the mix, about 2 pounds of marijuana, and alleged links to 6 felony assaults. Named defendants in open court included Reuben Rowe marijuana distribution, firearm during drug trafficking, Gale drug and firearm charges, and Lowing Yar methamphetamine distribution. Immigration consequences noted. The immediate outcome is mixed. Arrests made, several defendants released on supervision pending trial, and the larger weapons and drugs investigation continuing under federal oversight. Gale was later sentenced to 66 months in federal prison for marijuana distribution and selling handguns tied to drug trafficking, followed by 5 years supervised release and potential deportation.
Gang members in jail and taking guns off the street, we thought most of them would stay in jail until trial, that they're simply too dangerous to set free.
Well, Brian Mastery is on your side with the investigation that found the opposite.
June 2017. A 7-month investigation into gun and drug trafficking in Omaha and Council Bluffs leads to 22 arrests of gang members with extensive criminal backgrounds. The ATF touts Operation Brass Catcher as a wake-up call. Kyrie Holbert, originally charged with distribution and using a gun during a drug deal, traveled to Texas to see a cousin without telling anyone. Draylon Perkins, originally charged with getting a gun for a felon, tested positive for and got into 2 fights, both recorded while on release. James Hart, arrested for distributing and using a gun while doing it, was rearrested for disorderly conduct while on release from the feds. Kendall Williams, originally charged with getting a gun for a felon, was on house arrest, yet left his place without permission 23 times in a little over a month. Mylan Mayfield, originally charged with getting a gun for a felon, punishable by up to 10 years in prison, He told Magistrate Judge Susan Bezos he too would behave while out of jail.
And do you agree to abide by the conditions of release?
Yes, ma'am.
Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Mylan Mayfield didn't waste his freedom. The day after his release, he posted a public Facebook Live video identifying the ATF's confidential informant who bought guns from Mayfield as a rat and snitch, and that if you see him, smash him on sight, cut his tongue out, and send it to his mama. After that, Mayfield and his Facebook video partner, Robert Cokes, each faced a witness tampering charge.
In June 2017, federal and local authorities launched Operation Brasscatcher, a 7-month investigation into gun and drug trafficking across Omaha, Nebraska, and Council Bluffs, Iowa. The operation resulted in 22 arrests targeting gang-affiliated individuals with extensive criminal histories. Authorities described the takedown as a wake-up call to those bringing gun violence into the community. However, despite the severity of the charges, many of the defendants were released before trial. Of the 18 men charged federally, 11 were freed on signature bonds, meaning they promised to follow the court's rules and appear when required. According to court records and investigative reporting, nearly all of those released reoffended or violated their conditions while awaiting trial, exposing weaknesses in the federal pretrial release system. Among the defendants, Kyer Holbert was charged with distributing drugs and using a firearm during a drug transaction. He later violated his release by traveling to Texas without notifying authorities and ultimately received the longest sentence in the case, 20 years in federal prison. Drellon Perkins, accused of obtaining a firearm for a felon, tested positive for coke and was involved in multiple fights while out on bond. James Hart, facing similar charges for distributing drug and possessing a gun, was arrested for disorderly conduct while on release. Kendall Williams, charged with securing a gun for a felon, violated his house arrest 23 times within just over a month. Another defendant, Mylan Mayfield, charged with illegally supplying a gun to a felon, was released after promising the judge to follow the conditions of his bond. The very next day, he went on Facebook Live to publicly identify the ATF's confidential informant, calling him a rat and threatening to mutilate him. That post earned Mayfield an additional charge for witness tampering. When Mayfield returned to court, U.S. District Judge Robert Rossiter sentenced him to 18 months for the gun offense and another 18 months for the tampering, but ordered the time to be served concurrently, effectively giving him a year and a half behind bars. Law enforcement officials criticized the decision, saying it sent the wrong message about witness intimidation. Defense attorneys countered that every defendant is entitled to pretrial release if they meet the federal criteria, and that the system relies on rearresting those who break their conditions. Overall, Operation Brasscatcher resulted in 24 total arrests between federal and state cases, significant gun and drug seizures, and a clear picture of how lenient release standards sometimes clash with public safety concerns. While the ATF hailed the operation as a major blow to gang-related gun trafficking, the aftermath revealed an unsettling pattern. Nearly every defendant given a second chance before trial ended up back behind bars.
It led to more than a dozen arrests and brought down a major Omaha drug ring. Tonight, the last defendant knows how much time he will spend in prison.
A year and a half since the Omaha Police Department announced a 9-month collaboration called Operation Purple Haze, which took down a hierarchy of drug activity in the Omaha and surrounding metro areas. Today, Judge Gary Randall ordered Darnell Russell to serve at least 10 years in prison. In total, at least 13 people were arrested in the operation on drug and weapons charges, some part of the 40th Avenue gang. 9 of them are sentenced in Douglas County to prison time. 2 of the men get federal sentences. 1 got drug court, and 1 had charges dismissed. Investigators used wiretapping and undercover work to fish out an entire drug operation. Prosecutors say Eric English and Carlos Taylor were the leaders. They received the lengthiest sentences.
For 9 months, Omaha investigators shadowed local drug markets and intercepted coded phone calls as part of Operation Purple Haze, an FBI-led task force case with local partners. Agents learned dealers used words like shoe to signal a deal and, through hundreds of hours of recorded calls backed by street surveillance, uncovered an unusual alliance between 2 rival street gangs coordinating drug sales. Prosecutors called the taps real-time evidence and used them as the backbone of their courtroom strategy. More than a dozen defendants described as known gang members accepted plea deals and received prison terms rather than risk a trial built on their own recorded conversations. One defendant, Darnell Russell, chose to go before a jury and was found guilty in under 2 hours. The case also sparked debate over wiretaps. Judges stressed they are a last resort tool that requires proof other methods fail, while defense lawyers warned about privacy and the risk that privileged calls can be overheard. Even with those concerns, prosecutors said the recordings were decisive, helping dismantle a drug distribution network and sending key players to prison, though full, case-by-case sentences beyond Russell's conviction were not publicly detailed.
You're with the Metro Fugitive Task Force and OPD gang unit as they track down and arrest fugitives.
That camera on my phone.
And arrest
29th Street blood, his history, crack, carrying concealed weapons, use of unregistered firearms.
With armed men on all corners of the house, they arrest Perry and move on to the next warrant. But not all arrests are that simple. Other arrests were higher profile and took weeks of research, like the Triple near 9th and Bancroft. The task force arrested Anthony Davis and Timothy Britt. Neither are gang members, but both are jailed for the murders of Miguel Avalos Sr. and his sons Miguel Jr. and Jose. And just last weekend, another homicide arrest. The task force arrested William Bush, an alleged gang member, for the April of Kyle McCroy. The task force jailed Antoine Powell and Charles Tolles, both alleged gang members, along with Tequila Knight for having a stolen firearm. Suspects in the case of a Crescent, Iowa woman beaten and bound, left in a pickup truck alongside a highway, aren't gang members, but the task force picked them up too. Travis Labno arrested at home. Brian Bay's arrest more violent, caught on surveillance camera outside Louis' Bar and Grill. Several felons featured in Crime Stoppers Most Wanted, including Leatrice Wallace, an alleged gang member, Tyrell Donald, who was hiding in Texas, and Jason McKillop. Officials say he had a gun, ammunition, and narcotics with him.
Over a 3-month sweep from June 1st to September 1st, Omaha's Operation Triple Beam zeroed in on guns, drugs, and gang members, leading to 268 arrests, 139 of whom police classified as violent offenders. Investigators recovered 101 firearms, nearly $500,000 worth of narcotics, and more than $11,000 in cash. Police highlighted the arrests of Sharmar Dorch, Joseph Harris, and Juan Cemental, and said they are still looking for Bernard Randolph Turner Jr., wanted for first-degree deletion. Omaha Police Chief Todd Schmaderer called the effort very targeted enforcement aimed at the city's most violent offenders, noting that despite recent shootings believed to be gang-related, the operation successfully removed dangerous individuals from the streets. Detailed outcomes for each arrestee weren't provided at the announcement and typically follow later through separate county, state, or federal court proceedings, where charges can result in pretrial release, pleas, trials, or sentencing depending on the evidence and prior records.
The special mission, Operation Wipe It Down. It took down already a dozen criminals. Good evening, I'm Jeremy Maskell. Omaha's, quote, career gang thugs with guns and drugs, well, they are feeling the heat from local and federal law enforcement tonight. Today, police announced the first wave of indictments and arrests in the operation. It's a new push to get illegal guns and violent criminals who use them off the streets.
In Omaha, federal and local authorities announced a major joint investigation known as Operation Wipe It Down, which targeted individuals involved in gang activity, drug trafficking, and illegal firearms distribution. The operation led to 18 people being charged on a combination of federal and state gang-related offenses, with 9 of them taken into custody at the time of the announcement. According to law enforcement officials, the group was deeply entrenched in criminal activity and collectively had more than 400 prior police contacts, 72 arrests, 15 felony convictions, and 49 misdemeanors. During the course of the investigation, officers recovered 28 firearms, over a pound of marijuana, and approximately 72 grams of crack cocaine. Authorities stated that the investigation focused on dismantling networks responsible for supplying illegal guns and drugs to Omaha streets, aiming to curb violent gang activity throughout the metro area. Those charged faced a range of allegations including firearms trafficking, drug possession and distribution, and illegal possession of weapons by convicted felons. Federal records later showed that several defendants tied to Operation Wipe It Down and related investigations received prison sentences ranging from several months to over 25 years, depending on their role and prior convictions. Omaha and Lincoln Police and County Sheriff partners ran an anti-gang sweep called Operation KO that resulted in 231 arrests, including 144 identified gang members. Investigators focused on warrants, gang suppression, and intervention, and they recovered 86 firearms, roughly 821,774 in illegal drugs by street value, and about 48,900 in cash. They also located 3 missing children and 2 stolen vehicles. Arrest charges span violent and non-violent offenses. 36 arrests for assault, 68 for weapons violations, 2 for sexual assault, 5 for failure to register, 6 for burglary, 53 for drug offenses, 15 for robbery, 3 for vehicle theft, and 32 for other charges. One highlighted arrest was Maurice Coleman, described as a Flatland Blood member, who was booked on assault, robbery, resisting arrest, and weapons counts. During that arrest, a missing child was also taken into protective custody. The stories from Operation Trip Set, Operation Brass Catcher, Operation Wipe It Down, Operation Triple Beam, Operation Purple Haze, and the Serrano's Safe Streets takedown reveal how deeply entrenched Omaha's gang problem became and how aggressively authorities have responded. Hundreds of guns seized, millions in narcotics recovered, and countless arrests show a city unwilling to surrender to violence. Yet, as these cases also reveal, many suspects continue to cycle through the courts, walking free on bond only to re-offend, underscoring the delicate balance between justice and public safety. Federal prosecutors have pushed forward with RICO cases, wiretap investigations, and multi-agency raids, but community leaders stress that real peace in Omaha will depend not only on arrests, but also on prevention, outreach, and rebuilding neighborhoods long scarred by poverty and retaliation. Nebraska's history has been defined by resilience, and in Omaha's ongoing struggle against gang crime, that same spirit remains alive, a determination to prove that even in America's heartland, justice can prevail.